It was a tribute to my father at 56 Hope Road, the Bob Marley Museum. And I was trying to get through the gate. And one of the security guys saw me trying to come through and started to clear the way for me. And he was like, make space, Gang Junior come.
There is a name in reggae music that carries more weight than almost any other on the planet. And it does not belong to a single man. It belongs to a family, the Marleys. For nearly 5 decades, the world has watched the sons and daughters of Bob Marley step into recording studios and onto stages, each one carrying a piece of a legacy that was never really theirs to choose. Among them, one figure has quietly become the most decorated, the most genre-defying, and in many ways the most misunderstood, Damian Jr. Gong Marley. He is the youngest of Bob Marley's sons, a Grammy powerhouse with more trophies than any of his brothers, a man who has stood on stages with Nas and Mick Jagger, and yet he remains, to most casual fans, a mystery wrapped inside a famous surname. Today we're going to walk through who Damian Marley really is, where he came from, how he built a career that in some ways eclipsed his own father's commercial success in America, and the persistent rumors of tension between him and his brother Ziggy that have followed the family for years. This is not a story of scandal invented for clicks. It is the real story, and it is compelling enough on its own. Damian Marley was born in Kingston, Jamaica, in 1978, the youngest of Bob Marley's children. He was only 2 years old when his father died of cancer in 1981, which means Damian never really had the chance to know the man whose shadow he would spend his entire life standing beside. Unlike some of his older siblings who grew up around their father during his most active touring years, Damian's relationship with Bob Marley exists almost entirely through stories, recordings, photographs, and the enormous cultural weight of a name that belongs to the whole world. His mother, Cindy Breakspear, was a former Miss World title holder, and she raised Damian in Stony Hill, one of the more affluent neighborhoods overlooking Kingston. Breakspear later married Tom Tavares Finson, a prominent Jamaican criminal defense lawyer and politician, and together they raised a blended household. Damian has spoken openly about the strange duality of his upbringing. He was the only child in that household with brown skin, since his stepfather and younger half-siblings were white Jamaicans, while his own father had been one of the most visible black cultural icons in modern history, a man deeply rooted in the teachings of Marcus Garvey and the philosophy of Rastafari. That contrast shaped Damian in ways that show up throughout his music. He was raised in comfort, in a household connected to law and politics, the very institutions his father's generation of reggae musicians often sang against as symbols of Babylon. Yet he embraced his father's Rastafarian identity fully once he finished school, choosing music over an earlier ambition to become an architect. It is a detail that tends to surprise people. Before he ever picked up a microphone with intention, young Damian Marley wanted to design buildings, not albums. Damian's first real step into music came at the age of 13, when he helped form a group called the Shepherds alongside Chino McGregor, son of reggae legend Freddie McGregor, and a son of Catcore from the band Third World. The group performed at the 1992 Reggae Sunsplash Festival, one of the most important platforms in Jamaican music at the time. The Shepherds didn't last, like a lot of teenage projects. It dissolved within a few years, but it planted the seed for what would become a serious solo career. Working through his father's label, Tough Gong, Damian released his debut album, Mr. Marley, in 1996. It was a jarring introduction for listeners who expected the son of Bob Marley to sing in the classic roots reggae tradition. Instead, Damian DJ'd, the Jamaican term for what much of the world now calls rapping or toasting over a rhythm, blending dancehall cadences with reggae foundations. It was not what people expected from a Marley, and that was very much the point. His second album, Halfway Tree, released in 2001, is where the world truly started to understand what Damian Marley was building. The title itself carries a layered meaning. Halfway Tree is a real, culturally significant landmark in Kingston, historically marked by a clock tower where an old cotton tree once stood, and the album cover places Damian directly in front of it. But a title is also a personal metaphor, a reference to his mother's more privileged upbringing and his father's roots in a much poorer part of Kingston, positioning Damian as a kind of bridge between two very different Jamaicas. Halfway Tree won the Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album in 2002, co-produced with his older half-brother Stephen Marley, and it established a creative partnership between the two of them that would define much of Damian's most celebrated work going forward. If Halfway Tree introduced Damian Marley to a wider audience, his 2005 album, Welcome to Jamrock, is the one that made him impossible to ignore. The title track sampled a rhythm originally created by the legendary production duo Sly and Robbie for Jamaican artist Iny Kamoze roughly 2 decades earlier, and Damian and Stephen built lyrics on top of it that confronted poverty, political corruption, and crime in Jamaica head-on. It was not a flattering postcard to the island, and that honesty stirred real controversy back home, where some felt it painted Jamaica in an unfairly harsh light for international audiences. But for many others, including respected academics, the song was read as something closer to a warning cry than an insult, using the image of Jamaica's inner cities to talk about alienation and injustice, while still holding onto hope and cultural pride. Commercially, the song did something no Bob Marley single had ever managed to do on the American charts. It broke into the mainstream in a way that felt genuinely crossover, climbing into the UK Top 20 and cracking the US Billboard Hot 100. The album itself went gold in the United States, and it earned Damian Marley 2 Grammy Awards in a single night: Best Reggae Album and Best Urban/Alternative Performance, the latter for the song, Welcome to Jamrock itself. He remains the only reggae artist to ever win in that particular Grammy category, and no other Jamaican reggae artist had swept 2 Grammys in one night before him. Other standout tracks from the record, including Road to Zion featuring Nas and Beautiful featuring Bobby Brown, showed a willingness to reach across genres that would come to define the rest of his career. The collaboration hinted at with Nas on Road to Zion evolved into something much bigger a few years later. In 2010, Damian Marley and Nas released a full joint album called Distant Relatives, a project built around their shared interest in African heritage and identity. The album blended Damian's dub and reggae instincts with Nas's lyrical density, using African musical samples throughout and centering its lyrics on themes of ancestry, poverty, and the parallel struggles faced by Black communities in the United States and across the African continent. Proceeds from the album were directed toward funding school construction in the Congo, tying the project's message directly to tangible action. Distant Relatives debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, Nas's 10th album to crack the top 10 and Damian's second, and it topped Billboard's R&B/hip-hop, rap, and reggae albums charts simultaneously. It also performed respectably overseas, charting in the UK, Canada, Germany, and across Europe. The lead single, As We Enter, found an audience on both hip-hop and mainstream digital charts, and the duo went on to headline a National Geographic-sponsored panel discussion on the African diaspora's connection to music, using their platform to talk seriously about the ideas behind the record rather than just promoting it. Damian Marley's willingness to work outside reggae reached its most unusual point in 2011, when it was revealed he was part of a supergroup called Super Heavy, alongside Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, producer and musician Dave Stewart, Indian composer A.R. Rahman, and British singer Joss Stone. The idea reportedly originated with Stewart, who had grown fascinated by the sounds drifting through his home in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica, and pitched Jagger on fusing that Caribbean influence with Indian orchestral elements. The band's very name is said to be a nod to Muhammad Ali. The group recorded roughly 35 hours of material in Los Angeles before debuting their work at Jim Henson Studios in mid-2011. Their lead single, Miracle Worker, featured Damian alongside Jagger and Stone and charted in the UK. Their second single, Satyam Jade, meaning Truth Alone Triumphs in Sanskrit and doubling as India's national motto, was released just ahead of India's Independence Day and premiered across more than 20 Indian cities. Composed by Rahman, with Jagger singing in Sanskrit. It was an odd, ambitious detour for a reggae artist from Kingston, and it underscored just how far Damian was willing to stretch beyond genre expectations. The following year, in 2012, Damian teamed up with American electronic producer Skrillex for Make It Bun Dem, a track that also appeared in the video game Far Cry 3, and went on to achieve platinum status, another commercial milestone his father's catalog, for all its cultural dominance, never technically reached in that form during Bob's lifetime. Damian released his 4th studio album, Stony Hill, in July 2017, named after the Kingston neighborhood where he grew up. Its lead single, Nail Pond Cross, arrived nearly a year earlier in 2016. The album went on to win the Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album at the 60th Annual Grammy Awards, his fourth Grammy overall, and a continuation of a pattern that had started with Halfway Tree more than 15 years earlier. Throughout his catalog, Damian has resisted drawing a hard line between reggae and dancehall, describing both as simply part of the same Jamaican cultural fabric rather than separate genres to be kept apart. That refusal to be boxed in is arguably the through line of his entire career. A Marley who inherited a genre-defining name and then spent 2 decades deliberately not staying inside the genre it defined. Bob Marley had 11 children, 9 of them biological, and 7 of his children pursued music careers of their own, including 5 sons: Ziggy, Stephen, Damian, Kymani, and Julia Marley. In 2025, ahead of what would have been Bob Marley's 80th birthday, all 5 brothers reunited for the Legacy Tour, their first performances together in roughly 2 decades. At a stop at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater in Chula Vista, California, the brothers, who between them hold 22 Grammy Awards, demonstrated just how deliberately they've built their live shows around unity rather than individual spotlight chasing. The show opened with a video of their father preparing to perform Natural Mystic, and the brothers picked up the thread from there in a carefully choreographed rotation, trading verses on classics like Get Up, Stand Up, and Iron Lion Zion. What followed was less a concert built around one star and more a relay. Ziggy, as the eldest, opened one stretch of the set with Coming In from the Cold, before passing to Julian for Positive Vibrations, then Kymani for Heathen, Stephen for Rebel Music, and Damian for Concrete Jungle. Ziggy and Stephen shared vocals on War, before handing off directly into Damian's No More Trouble. The pattern repeated across the night, Julian into Running Away, Kymani and Damian teaming on Crazy Baldhead, Ziggy leading Three Little Birds, with support from Damian and Stephen. Damian brought his own dancehall-inflected energy to Is This Love, before Stephen delivered what many longtime fans consider an uncanny vocal tribute to their father on Don't Rock My Boat. Beyond the Bob Marley catalog, each brother also carved out room for his own material. Julian with Boom Draw, Kymani with New Heights, Ziggy with Shalom Salam and Melancholy Mood, and Damian performing Medication, alongside Stephen along with his own Me Name Junior Gong. The night closed with a full group rotating through Exodus, before an encore of Could You Be Loved and One Love. It was, by all accounts, a show built entirely around collective identity rather than individual ego, which makes the persistent rumors of tension between 2 of its stars all the more interesting. For years, whispers of friction between Damian and his older half-brother Ziggy have circulated among fans, and they resurfaced with real intensity around the release of the 2024 biopic Bob Marley, One Love. The film opened on Valentine's Day and posted a record-breaking performance for the holiday, topping the U.S. box office with roughly $51 million in its opening. Its commercial success quieted a good number of early critics who had questioned whether a Jamaican actor, or one of Bob's own sons, should have played the lead role instead. Ziggy and his sister Sadella served as executive producers on the film, and the role ultimately went to British actor Kingsley Ben-Adir after producers were impressed by his audition. Notably, none of Bob Marley's sons auditioned for the part themselves. Some backlash followed the film's decision to leave Cindy Breakspear, Damian's mother, out of the final cut, and that omission fed speculation about tension between the brothers. Adding fuel to that speculation, Damian did not attend any of the film's premieres in Jamaica or internationally, and he did not promote the movie on his own social media. Ziggy addressed the rumors directly in interviews, saying that he speaks with his brothers daily and that the family simply doesn't operate through that kind of public drama. He explained Damian's absence from the promotional rollout as a matter of scheduling and other commitments rather than any rift, and he described the family as united. On the film's mixed critical reception, it performed far better with general audiences than with critics, receiving notably low scores on aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes. Ziggy said he wasn't particularly concerned by the criticism, while acknowledging that some of it might be fair. Whether that explanation fully satisfies fans who noticed Damian's conspicuous silence is a matter of personal judgment. What can be said with certainty is that no confirmed source, not Ziggy, not Damian, not any representative for either brother, has ever described a genuine falling out between them, and the two have continued to perform together, including throughout the 2025 Legacy Tour just described. The tension, if it exists at all beyond the ordinary friction of a large famous family working through a sensitive project about their father, has never been confirmed as anything more than speculation. What makes Damian Marley's story compelling isn't scandal. It's the sheer improbability of what he built without his father physically present to guide any of it. He grew up straddling two very different versions of Jamaica, chose music over architecture, DJ'd when the world expected him to sing roots reggae, and ended up doing something his own father's globally worshipped catalog never quite managed, landing genuine crossover hits on American charts, from Welcome to Jamrock to the platinum-certified Make It Bun Dem with Skrillex. He has collaborated with Nas on a politically and culturally serious album about the African diaspora, joined forces with Mick Jagger and A.R. Rahman in a genre-blending supergroup, and picked up more Grammy Awards than any of his brothers, while still finding time to reunite with all four of them for a tour honoring their father's 80th birthday. And through all of it, the persistent question of tension with Ziggy remains exactly what it has always been, a rumor that both sides have publicly denied, playing out against the backdrop of brothers who, whatever their private disagreements might occasionally be, keep choosing to share a stage. Damian Marley never asked to inherit reggae's most famous name. What he did instead was refuse to let that name define the limits of what he could make. That, more than any rumor, is the real story.